Yeah. Aswand, Cruickshank, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, checking in for a daily Move Swiftly thought, giving you a perspective on teamwork that you will not get anywhere else. Coordinates, April 25th, 2024, the day of the NFL draft against a ceremony, a draft, an event. Yeah, we'll call it an event. You know, there's so many words I have for the NFL draft, but we'll call it an event, all right? It's an event that I no longer watch live. However, being a football guy, I'm always interested in listening to the storylines and all the kind of the new stuff that comes out, and you know how much of a big deal that the NFL is made of it. I'm always, kind of just looking at certain stats and looking at numbers. And yesterday, Max Preps came out with a list of the high schools who had the most players drafted, who has had the most players drafted in the NFL over the past decade. And there was a feeling of genuine nostalgia when I looked at that list. The list that was dominated by Florida schools. However, the Florida schools I'm going to get into in a second, but Florida schools, all these Florida schools that were on that list, I have an experience. I've experienced all of them in my 6-7 years now out here in Florida. I've been on all of those campuses. I've seen them play and stuff like that. But the one school that was from the D.M.V on that list was the one that I was most proud of seeing, because that's my core. With the one school that made on the list from the D.M.V was DeMatha Catholic, and even as a 𝐓𝐘𝐒 alum, someone that has competed against DeMatha, and they were our rivals. It was always us versus them every single year. There's a sense of pride, because that's home. That's my core. That's how I learned the business, learned the game, and learned everything. And when you look at that list, and even at the first team on that list is 𝐈G Academy. When you look at the fact that 𝐈G Academy is number one, and you even have DeMatha making the list, understand this is a win. This is a big win for the state of Maryland, all right? This is a big win for the state of Maryland, not only because of DeMatha, but understand 𝐈G is an Under Armour school, and the founder of Under Armour is a D.M.V guy. Is from Maryland, went to St. John's, and he's the one that funds, he outfits the entire 𝐈G Academy. In fact, I'll get into it in a second, but I remember taking a tour there, and this is when I actually worked for FBU, and FBU at the time was an Adidas company, and I remember meeting the actual founder, the person that started the 𝐈G football program. And I was told basically, I was basically told, look, I might have to cover up that Adidas logo, because he remembered, he reminded me, that, yeah, you guys are Adidas and all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, the point of me breaking all that down for you as I get into today's Move Swiftly thought is understanding that experience in life is your teacher. You can't plan everything. Understand that just certain things happen. And I tell you all the time, one of my favorite books, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about how the successful people have been fortunate enough to be around and to have really fortunate circumstances, not taken away from the hard work, but some really fortunate circumstances in which that allowed them to learn a lot of things in the business that, you just don't plan. All right. So before I decided to move to Florida, like I mentioned, I lived in Maryland, and I was working for a company named FBU, Football University. And FBU is a camp company, and we create teams. And the main guy, the team director, was a guy named Mike Anderson, and Mike Anderson also runs a grassroots he started up his own league. My bad. Forgive me if I'm a little off. I just did a half marathon today, guys. So today was one of the longer runs. I was moved by all the new information that was coming out. So anyway, I remember being in the D.M.V, and Mike Anderson would talk to the boys all the time. He was the founder of the Grassroots Football League, and he was also the team director for FBU. And he'd talk to the boys all the time. He'd always tell them, look, it's not about what you know, it's not about who you know, but it's about who knows you. And in fact, he's been on this very podcast. Just go look up the episode titled Grassroots in all caps, right? So I remember, like I mentioned, when I first got to Florida, I was in Sarasota, in the St. Petersburg, Tampa, Sarasota area for a little bit. And the first thing I made sure I did was go to 𝐈G Academy and got a tour of the place, looked around and all that stuff. And then it was interesting, because one of the first players that I saw there, his name was Jordan Anthony, and he was actually a guy who was from 𝐷𝐿, which was my alma mater. And I believe he ended his career at 𝐈G and then played for Michigan, I believe it was, right? So there was that. I got, kind of got myself a little bit situated in Sarasota, and then boom, I got a position with the Miami Dolphins, and I moved to South Florida. All right, now on that list of schools, let me just give you the list. It was IMG, it was St. Thomas Aquinas, it was American Heritage, it was the Northwest Bulls, and then it was Miami Central, right? So when I first got to South Florida, like I mentioned, I'm in Plantation, one of the first games that I ever went to, because I wanted to see what the hype was. St. Thomas Aquinas is referred to as like the good counsel of South Florida and all that. So I actually went, my first game was the St. Thomas Aquinas taking on Miami Central, two teams that were on that list. And I remember actually couple of years later when I got the position at PCA and I was doing workshops, I did a workshop for St. Thomas Aquinas. I mean, this is I'm in my early 30s giving a workshop to 70 plus coaches talking about how to win the right way, to raise better people, things like that. And again, I wouldn't have been able to have the confidence to do that had I not had the advice of the Mike Andersons, who was not only telling the boys, but telling us as men, look, it's about who knows you and the confidence it gives you and things like that, right? So that was Miami Central and the St. Thomas Aquinas experience. As far as the Heritage experience, I remember I think it was earlier that season where I went to one of their early games and I saw, how it was back when Patrick Surtain was the head coach who used to play for the Dolphins, and he was coaching his son, who was also a first-round pick coming out of Alabama. I mean, just so many ties, so many things. But there was also another situation with that game, because again, this is what I did. I was, scouting. I was all over the place when I first got out here because I wanted to experience it. This was why I moved to South Florida, but I'll close you out with this story, right? So it was that year in which it was the state championship and it was all the Florida schools, right? I drove all the way cut off there. I got to get some new storage, but I'll make this one quick. It was actually the year in which that same year it was all the South Florida schools I went to the state championship where it was all the Florida schools, and the South Florida schools had a clean sweep. They won all the state championship games, right? So this was the first time I got a chance to see the Northwest Bulls, and they were competing against Armwood High School. And I heard about Armwood because I had a couple teammates when I went to Stony Brook that went to Armwood and Tampa, and I was hearing how big time they actually were. And long story short, man, Northwest absolutely destroyed them. And this was the first time I actually saw 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐎𝐘. The first time I laid eyes on 𝐂𝐍𝐉𝐿, who I believe he plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now. He went on to play at Pitt, and he stuck right out. And the main reason for me breaking all of that down for you is understanding that wherever you are, I believe it's POME, the acronym is POME, product of your environment. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, kind of absorb the situation, absorb whatever it is you're about, absorb the things that you're really passionate about, and eventually you'll start becoming attracted to the right people, start moving in the right direction, start being around the things that are going to give you the knowledge, give you the insight, give you the game, so to speak, so you're able to do whatever it is you're trying to do, able to create whatever it is you're trying to create. Understand, I came into South Florida being that guy, or just Florida in general, being that guy that wanted to go scout for a major team. And eventually I landed on, look, why not run my own business? Because all of the knowledge and all the things that were already going in my own head, I was able to develop the confidence to come on and speak on these things regularly and talk and build up my own platform, all right? Main website to check out to dive deeper into all my work, makeyourmove.com. That's MakeYourMove.com. One-stop shop for your teamwork and your self-development needs. Aswand, Cruickshank, your one and only Move Swiftly speaker, checking out. You guys continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.